Live from our hurricane headquarters with real-time analysis from some of the nation's top meteorologists, this is Tracking the Tropics, powered by Bose Electric.
Hurricane Helene is here. The NHC upgrading the system moments ago to a Category 1 hurricane with a track that takes it through Florida's Big Bend as a major hurricane on Thursday. We have the latest cone, new model runs, and a live Q&A that starts now here on Tracking the Tropics. We are now here on Wednesday. Welcome into the Stream Center, folks, with meteorologist Eric Stone. I'm JB Buno, wherever you are watching from in the state of Florida, elsewhere in the United States, elsewhere in the world. Welcome into our interactive coverage of Hurricane Helene. This is going to be kicking off a very long day of coverage and several days of coverage as we are talking about Hurricane Helene here in the center of your screen. Want to let you know, we are here to answer your questions. That's what takes us beyond television, right? Is that you can put your comment in on Facebook Live, on YouTube Live with our hashtag system, hashtag HeyEric, hashtag HeyJB. We will be spotlighting your comments on screen throughout the stream and be able to talk to you about what we're seeing here with Hurricane Helene. But before we get to the questions, because we want to give everybody a chance to punch them in, we're going to send Eric over to the wall for the latest 11 o'clock advisory that just came in, Eric, moments ago from the National Hurricane Center.
That's right. We do have now Hurricane Helene. In fact, it boosted 10 miles per hour since the past advisory at 8 this morning. It looks like it did miss Cancun, so we're not seeing any weakening whatsoever. So once again, this is going to continue to strengthen as it moves in the Gulf. It's going to really pick up in forward speed later on today and into Thursday. Look at this, Category 3 storm well offshore of southwest Florida, still a Category 3 storm heading toward Tallahassee, which means somewhere in this area it could become a Category 4 storm, and Jeff and I talked yesterday about that. We do believe that this will have enough energy to increase to a Cat 4 sometime on Thursday, but it does look like the track's still well away from the Bay Area. That doesn't mean we're not going to feel the effects. It looks like it's going to make landfall even to the west of Perry and then move pretty close to downtown Tallahassee. And the models, once again, are pretty much in agreement, still to the east of Panama City and to the west of Perry, moving right over Tally, right? Oh, this is going to be a strong storm for them. Major hurricane force winds for our state's capital. So, European and GFS models, it is unbelievable how close these are, all the way to landfall. Look at that. Both models have this pretty close, within about 10 miles of each other, just to the west of Perry, near Tallahassee, and then moving northward toward the Memphis and Knoxville area in the Tennessee Valley. Our in-house model yesterday was to the east. Now it has shifted back to the west a bit. Still did not make landfall. This one had it right in the Cancun area. But again, it's when does it take that turn to the northeast? It should be later today. And then that northeasterly turn and continuation should last through Thursday. It will be as close to our Bay Area as it will get, right around 5, 6 o'clock tomorrow evening. So that's what we can expect, the strongest winds along the Pinellas County coastline, and then Pasco, Hernando, and Citrus County coastline a few hours later. Here is landfall slightly to the east of Perry. So this model is one of the eastern outliers, but still it is within that envelope of models, and then moves up into Valdosta, still with an eye, believe it or not, still a hurricane in South Georgia because of how fast it will be moving. Plenty of ocean heat content to work with over the next 12 to 24 hours, so we are expecting this thing to really intensify rapidly from now through tomorrow morning. As far as storm surge looks, well, Manatee, Sarasota County, 4 to 7 feet, 5 to 8 in Pinellas County, and 6 to 10 foot of storm surge from Hernando to Pasco County, 10 to 15 feet in Citrus County. So let's take a closer look. All of Citrus County, at least 9 foot on this graphic, but again, I mentioned 10 to 15 foot of storm surge, 9 plus 6 to 10 in Hernando County and Pasco. Once we get into the northern portions of Pinellas County, places like Dunedin, Tarpon Springs, which typically floods, going to see at least 5 foot of storm surge there, all the way down to Palm Harbor. as well as Clearwater Beach. It looks like once we get into Clearwater, it won't be so bad with the intercoastal, but still, as we head toward the Bay Area, this is where I'm really concerned because Tampa Bay itself, a good 3 to 5 foot storm surge in the southern portions of Davis Island, South Tampa area, and then even as we head toward eastern Hillsborough County on the eastern shores from Piney Point to Ruskin Apollo Beach especially, and points northward, we're looking at a possibility of 3 to 5 foot of storm surge. Once we get to Manatee County, as you can see, Whitney Beach to Longboat Key to Siesta Key, it's looking more like 3 to 5 foot of storm surge, but still, that is quite a lot being inundated on the roadways right along the shore. Okay, wind this afternoon, it's not going to be all that gusty. We'll see wind gust up over 20. This is wind speed, of course. And once we get into tomorrow early afternoon, we'll start to see the possibility of tropical storm force wind. This is the European model, which is slightly to the west and slightly weaker than the GFS model. But you still see wind speeds upwards of 50 miles per hour along the coast, and then things subside as we head into Friday. GFS, a little bit stronger of a storm, and again, slightly closer, but even a 10 to 20 mile jog to the east is really going to bump up these wind values. Tomorrow morning, we're seeing wind speeds 20 to 30, and then 50 to even 60 as we head into Thursday evening, and then, of course, everything subsides. As far as wind gusts go, and this is what's going to be interesting to see if we do see hurricane-force wind gust, which I do think we will along the immediate coast. There it is in St. Pete, Thursday evening between 5 and 8 o'clock, and many of us along the coast, 60 to 70 mile per hour wind gusts. So definitely flirting with hurricane-force wind gusts. Friday overnight, wind gusts subside to about 30, and then more normal on Friday evening. Now, this is our in-house model, again, slightly to the east of the other models, but still much more to the west compared to last night. So once we get into the middle part of the afternoon on Thursday, here it is. You can see those 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts becoming 60 to 75 mile per hour by Thursday evening. And then once again with a very, very strong storm. Look at the area of blue, which is 125 mile per hour wind gusts. It is huge. It is a good 80 miles across. Doesn't quite get into our neck of the woods, but I do, again, expect those hurricane-force wind gusts from coastal Pinellas County all the way up toward coastal Citrus County. And then once it gets to Tallahassee, Lake City, look at that. Even in Lake City along I-10, 100 to 125 mile per hour gusts. So again, with a fast-moving storm, it's going to take the winds a little bit longer to die down as it moves inland. Now, this is the chance of hurricane-force wind sustained. And you can see none of our area has any chance whatsoever of a sustained hurricane-force wind of 75 miles per hour or more. So I guess that would be the silver lining to the cloud, right? But again, if this does jog off to the east just a bit, that will change. So look at the tropical storm force wind 175 miles away from the center of circulation, which means we could start to see that tomorrow, right around lunchtime or so here in the Tampa Bay area, but we never seem to tap into the hurricane force wind. So that is good news, even in Citrus and Hernando counties. But still, tropical storm force wind lasting all the way through, look at that, overnight tonight, about 1, 2 o'clock here in Tampa, and then slightly after that as we head toward Friday morning. Again, the best chance would be right around 11 o'clock to start to see those tropical storm force wind right here in the Bay Area, Sarasota, around 8 o'clock in the morning, a little bit further to the north. We're talking early to mid-afternoon. Now, rainfall really not going to be much of an issue, believe it or not, with a major hurricane. First of all, because the storm is offshore enough that it's not going to dump that solid rain for that long a period of time. So I would say 2 to 4 inches along the immediate coast as far as the GFS model is concerned. And even the Euro, it's not much different. There are a couple pockets of 4 to 6. So let's go 3 to 6 inches of rain along the coast. And then our in-house model, which is slightly closer to Tampa compared to the other models, still showing about 4 to 6 inches of rain. So again, this won't be a huge rainmaker because of how fast it's moving, but the storm surge is going to be what defines this storm. And of course, we're going to have a prolonged period of at least tropical storm force wind gusts, possibly hurricane force wind gusts.
Okay, I'm here with meteorologist Eric Stone. I'm JB Buno. We're about to get into the meteorologist Q&A here, where we can take your questions out of Facebook Live and YouTube Live and bring them onto the stream to discuss the latest of really what we're looking at here with Hurricane Helene. Before we get to the questions that are coming in, Eric, can you bring the track back up?
That's what we're doing.
Okay.
You got it.
Now, tell me if I'm crazy. Because I'm looking at this, and, obviously I went home last night, had dinner, spent time with the family, and, I was paying attention to what Helene was doing, but mostly turned my brain off to anything storm-related, and then waking up this morning, looking at this with fresh eyes. Now, is it me? Is the cone shifting west, or is it narrowing?
No. Well, it is narrowing in time, JB. That's what happens as we get closer to the actual landfall. The cone will narrow, but you're right. It is now right over top of Tallahassee, and I think 24 hours ago it was pretty close to where it's at right now. Now, of course, it was wider 24 hours ago because it was an extra day out, right? But again, the cone is very similar to 24 hours ago, but as far as 6, 12, 18 hours, yes, it has shifted slightly to the west.
Okay, a couple other notes before we get to the questions that are they're pouring in, literally, and pun not intended, but we're kind of getting in hundreds from Facebook Live and YouTube Live. Tallahassee looks to be in a really vulnerable spot. A reminder to our audience: if you know somebody in Tallahassee, look, those conversations should have started days ago, but really today is a day to talk to somebody in Tally and talk to them about, look, do you need help? Do you need a place to stay? If you check on your friends and family in Tallahassee or really anywhere in the cone right now with the 11 o'clock update with Hurricane.
And how many students go to Florida State that are from out of state that they don't know? Maybe they're freshmen and here comes a major hurricane. You just got here about a month ago. It's really a good idea to get out of that area if you can.
Okay, one more thing before we move on to the questions that are coming in. Can you bring up the GFS and the Euro again?
Yep.
And you had a freeze frame here with the GFS and Euro that I could not believe. These models rarely agree. Look at that.
Yeah.
You can't even see the red of the Euro underneath the GFS. You never see this agreement. Now,
not 2 days out.
It's a little more east than the track, so it'll be interesting to see if when the 5 o'clock update comes down, if the track maybe nudges to the east. But we've been doing this show for 6 years. We've never seen this tremendous model consensus. Lee Spann was talking about it this morning. The models being in lockstep this much from days out. I mean, we're barely into the Gulf of Mexico at this point. Days out, this model consensus, this level of model consensus is pretty unheard of. It means that the forecast models are really confident, highly confident, that this is where the storm is heading. Regardless, we are getting in a lot of questions from people. What are the chances that this hooks to the east, hooks to the west? We will be getting to that here in just a moment. And then the last note I'm going to make is that just because the cone takes it through Tallahassee does not mean that the Tampa Bay area isn't going to feel significant impacts, especially our coastal communities. Eric was talking about storm surge. Look, this isn't, a weekend or a Friday at the beach just yet for the Tampa Bay area. Like, let's pump the brakes on, we're clear. We're in the clear. That's not where we are just yet with this storm. Keep yourself prepared as much as possible and stay informed with us. Okay, our system for taking questions on this program. If you use hashtag HeyEric or hashtag HeyJB, we can load in your comment from YouTube Live or Facebook Live just like this. Hashtag HeyJB from Tim Murray on YouTube. What is the latest time that I should evacuate Tallahassee to leave for Jacksonville? Okay, so talking about heading east here, I also want to note you could head west also, Pensacola, Mobile, Biloxi, New Orleans. Maybe somebody, Tim, in Jacksonville, and that's why you're heading in that direction. The later you leave, the more traffic buildup there is going to be on the interstate, and you really want to make sure that you are avoiding getting caught in a traffic jam in a hurricane. That is a recipe for disaster. With that said, Eric, what do we say for Tim?
Yeah, I mean, like JB said, I definitely go to the west because I really believe if this does jog, if the track does jog, it's going to jog to the east. We have two huge features, right? We've got a high pressure that's sitting over top of us, starting to move to the east right now, and we have a cutoff low to the west. This storm has to move in between those two, and that's why the models are in such an agreement, because there's really nowhere else to go. But if the high gets out of here sooner than later, this could jog a little bit to the east, and so I think a westerly drive along I-10 toward the Pensacola area would be a lot better. If you have family members in Jacksonville, you see those isobars, you see those lines, you see how tightly packed those lines are. And the tighter packed you see those lines, the stronger the wind is. And you see Jacksonville, those lines are like right next to each other. So Jacksonville's still going to get the possibility of hurricane force wind gusts. But the further west you go, you see the lines aren't as closely packed together, right? Once you get toward Pensacola, the same drive west as compared to Jacksonville, you're going to have less wind, less rain, and a much better non-dirty side on the west.
Can we bring the track up again? Because I know that there are people that are just finding our live stream that are looking for that track. Also want to ask, too, actually, I'm sorry, Eric, to do this to you. Can you back it up one more graphic? Can you go back to satellite and where the storm is? I mean, this storm is kissing Cancun. I mean, it's like the eye itself is like right there. I mean, as close to a landfall as you could possibly get to Cancun, maybe a few miles offshore. But we can now confidently say, as of really the last hour or two, Eric, if I'm not mistaken, that this has made that turn north, and you can actually see movement there on the computer graphics, north by northwest at 10 miles per hour. So it is making that turn, and we can say now entering the Gulf of Mexico, correct?
Correct. Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Next question comes in from Aubrey on Facebook Live, hashtag HeyJB. How do things look for Polk County and Bartow? Thank you for the updates. So look, things are getting somewhat better for Polk County, but Polk County by no means is in the clear.
Yeah, so, I showed you the wind field. It's huge. It's 175 mile per hour tropical storm force wind away from the center, okay? So in Polk County, you're definitely going to see wind of 40 miles an hour, gusting 50 to 60. And I would say the strongest would be late afternoon after about 4 o'clock to about 8, 9 o'clock on Thursday. It's not going to be a really long period of time compared to some of the other storms because this is moving so quickly. And as far as rain goes, you're going to see scattered rain bands throughout the day on Thursday. It's not going to be a solid shield of rain. So maybe only a couple inches of rain. I would say the greatest threat would be any trees that may be dead or weak at a 50 to 60 mile per hour wind gust. We saw this last year with a dahlia. It could blow over power lines and whatnot. So wind definitely the issue.
I'd like to switch over really quickly to show everybody our real-time wobble tracker. This is streaming live right now on WFLA.com. Now, this isn't really easy to read just yet because we don't have a well-defined eye within radar range. So when is this going to become more clear for us? When is it within radar range? And
it will. You're seeing the radar from Cuba. It's not going to be within radar range for at least another several hours, not until late afternoon. But what if an eye does form? You will see that eye in the satellite image that you see, the clouds, right? And then we'll be able to follow that eye once this becomes a little bit stronger, maybe by 2, 3 o'clock. Let's see if an eye does form. Because if this rapidly intensifies the way it's supposed to, then we should be seeing an eye in the next few hours or so.
Yeah. So for folks who've never seen the wobble tracker or never really, try to figure out exactly how it works, we need an eye and then the NHC's track to basically determine if a wobble is occurring. One wobble, coincidence. Two wobbles, eyebrow raiser. 3 or more wobbles, we're talking about a pattern or a trend that is quite literally unfolding in front of our eyes. Let's go to Toria. I believe this is on Facebook Live. Actually, no, this one is on YouTube. I'm from the UK, and I have a vacation home in Melbourne, Florida. What can I expect there?
Yeah, I mean, that's all the way on the East Coast, so you're not going to even experience really tropical storm force wind at all. You might see 30 or so mile per hour gusts. It's not going to be bad at all. In fact, on the central East Coast of Florida, so I think you're going to be fine over there.
Okay, so this next question that is coming in, invites a conversation about intensity. Let me ask you this question first before we get to the comment from YouTube and a username that I am going to really struggle to pronounce. Chances of a Cat 4 hitting Tallahassee. I mean, we see the models have been pretty consistent. At least the NHC's track has been very consistent with a Cat 3 major hurricane hitting, Florida's Big Bend, the Panhandle, and Tallahassee on Thursday night. But chances things could worsen.
But remember when we talked yesterday, JB, we saw 115, 115. Remember that? Mm-hmm. Now it's 120, 125. Okay.
Yeah.
And what did Jeff and I talk about yesterday? Especially, I've noticed that the Hurricane Center has underdone what the forecast wind in the last several storms, especially 2 to 3 days out. So now we're about a day and a half, 36 hours or so. So I wouldn't be surprised. We don't have to go up much more to get up to a Cat 4. Another 10 or so miles an hour. The one thing I'm interested about, JB, is there's going to be a lot of wind shear as it gets, well, not a lot, but more wind shear as it gets closer to making landfall. And and not as much ocean heat content to work with, not as much energy to work with. So I kind of think it's going to level out once it gets closer to Tampa and then stay at whatever that is. I'm not sure that I agree. Well, actually, so it looks like what the Hurricane Center is saying is 120 at Thursday morning. I wouldn't be surprised if it got to a Cat 4 offshore of Tampa, JB, and then decreased a bit back to 125. So I think it'll be 130, 135 offshore of Tampa. And then once it does encounter a little bit more wind shear and not really much energy to work with, it drops back to 125. But still, it's a major hurricane. It's a Category 3, and it's moving so quickly, it'll still be a Category 3 by the time it gets into downtown Tallahassee.
When I'm looking in this direction, folks, when I'm looking this way, it means I'm reading your comments coming in on Facebook Live and in YouTube Live, just kind of teeing them up for meteorologist Eric Stone to be able to answer those questions. So let's get to, okay, here we go. Ready? Chigsru. Yeah, I think that's right. Hashtag Hey Eric, hashtag Hey JB. Can you explain how forecasting rapid intensification works? Can we give a 20-second definition of rapid intensification for Chigsru here?
Right. So what you see here in this graphic that I just pulled up is what we call the ocean heat content. It's the amount of energy, right? It's the heat, right? 90-degree plus water temperatures. And when a hurricane goes over water like this and there's no wind shear, then it's the prime breeding ground. It's like a big pond on a humid day, and you've got all these mosquitoes breeding, right? You picture it like that. You don't really forecast the rapid intensification. The models predict it because of what you see right here and the lack of wind shear and the excess moisture. All the ingredients are there for rapid intensification. So again, we're saying that this is going to intensify quickly because of all these factors, and the models do indicate that as well.
I want to let everybody know I have tons of comments in the queue, and I'm going to be also weaving in comments that are just coming in that moment when I'm looking at my screen here in the Stream Center. I have a screen here that has scrolling comments. So please be patient. We're going to try to get to as many as possible, but also know if you're asking about a certain town or a certain county or a certain region of Florida, it might be answered by a question that we spotlight from another viewer. So please be patient. We are going to cover the map. We are going to get to as many towns and cities and as many regions of Florida and even beyond into Georgia and the Carolinas over the coming hour or so on our live stream. We're going to try to get to as many as we can. Jeannie, #6firstboth. How will we make it out? How will we make out in Delray Beach?
I love that place. There's a place called Silver Ball Museum. It's got 100 and something pinball machines. Oh, I love going to Delray Beach. I go there at least once a month. Thankfully, you're going to be so far south and east of where this thing is going to be that you're really not going to. You'll have a breezy day on Thursday. You may have a little bit of rain here and there, but Delray Beach is going to be just fine. And the wind is going to be, it's primarily going to be out of the southeast to south. So you're not going to see any storm surge or anything like that. It's going to be just fine.
All right, let's go to Tampa, near USF. So look, Tampa's got to be, on alert, but we're not getting a direct hit from this storm.
No, if we did get a direct hit, boy, I just can imagine. Tampa USF. I'm sure they, don't have classes. I don't know if they have them today, but tomorrow I'm sure school will be closed. Maybe even on Friday. But 60 to 70 mile per hour wind gust. We'll be flirting with hurricane-force wind gust in Hillsborough County and in the Tampa Bay area.
All right, now we get to the question that I think is on the top of mind for a lot of folks out there, people who are asking this question. We've been talking about model consensus and a cone that was this wide a couple days ago and now is getting skinnier and skinnier, which means more model consensus means that there's higher confidence in these models. But people are asking on social media, Susan being one of them, hashtag AJB, any indication that those steering winds could change? Rod, also on YouTube Live, hashtag AJB, what is the likelihood this storm will turn west like Ian did at the last minute? So
I think he means east there.
Right. That's what I thought too. But
yeah,
throwing up the comment regardless.
Again, Ian didn't have this high pressure that's sitting right over top of us. And that's also helping to steer this storm well to our west. Ian pretty much had a cold front coming in from the north that kind of pushed it to the east. It had nothing blocking it from moving to the east. So I just don't see that with this storm. I really think it's going to follow a similar path. Now, time is going to tell once it does start to turn to the northeast, if it turns sooner than later, and how, what angle does it move to the northeast? Right now, it's scheduled to move north-northeast. If it moves a little bit east of that, then, we could be looking closer to Cedar Key. But again, I just don't really see anything that will abruptly turn this like Charlie or Ian.
Let's go to, shout out Tarpon Springs. I was just there with the family this weekend. Some of the best Greek food you will eat, some of the kindest people you will meet, some of the biggest smiles you will see on the streets of the picturesque community of Tarpon Springs down there in, to our west here in Tampa. So VSAL on YouTube Live, hashtag First Both Houses, looking for Tarpon Springs. If we didn't flood for Idalia, are we okay? And also saying thanks for the coverage.
So, Replay Museum. It's a big, big pinball place. I go there. I was there last week. Good friends, near and dear to my heart that own it. They did have flooding. Of course, it's a flood-prone area. And we're talking about storm surge 5 to 8 feet in that area. So, Tarpon Springs definitely likely to be underwater as it was with Idalia. This could be a little bit worse, in fact, this time around.
Okay, let's talk about evacuations. Okay, so Carlos wants to know hashtag KJB. I live in town and country in a manufactured home right on the border of Zone A, but maps show that Zone B. But maps shows Zone B. I think that what he's saying is he lives in Zone B, but very close to Zone A. Should we evacuate? I mean, the zones are created for a reason, and if you're in Zone B, you're in Zone B. It's not a mandatory evacuation. However, these are rolling evacuations, right?
Right.
It's going to start with A,
yep,
and then progress through the alphabet from there. So you need to be. I think that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Eric. I think that the proper advice to pass along to people is you can evacuate regardless of whether or not. Well, if you're in a mandatory evacuation zone, you should absolutely evacuate. If you are in a secondary zone, it's really up to what's best for you and your family. Now, you're not going to have a mandatory evacuation issued for your zone if you're in Zone B at the moment, but it might feel like the right call. It's something where you should absolutely be prepared right now if they issue a Zone B evacuation. But really, what they're saying is that it's up to what's best for you and your family.
Yeah, if you're on Hillsborough Ave or south of that, then you're pretty close to the bay, and 3 to 5 foot of storm surge, combine that with the tide, could push water into Hillsborough Ave and even north of that. So, if you're anywhere near Hillsborough Ave in town and country, I would definitely evacuate. And if you're that close to Zone A and you're in a manufactured home like that, I would. I mean, I just think it's a good idea. Plus, a 60 to 70 mile per hour wind is not good for the roofs of those homes. I saw friends I have in Naples, right? And Ian ripped off, their roof. And that was so far away from Ian in Naples. So, again, I would evacuate. I think it's a good idea.
Let's go to, this is Donna, this is a good question on Facebook. I'm adding you to the queue. I'm adding a bunch to the queue here, but let's go through these. Megan Ann, #KJB, what to expect in Brandon, Valrico. That I have a friend in Valrico. So.
Yep, I do too. I've got a couple in Brandon and Valrico, and 60 to even 70 mile per hour wind gusts, probably closer to 60. Not as much in the way of rain, so I don't think you're going to see the flooding. But JB, how many dead trees and how many weak limbs and weak trees are out there that a 60 mile per hour wind gusts for several hours are going to knock over. And we saw that before. We saw that with the Dahlia, and that wasn't even close to our area, right? And so power could be out because of that. It's going to be what branches and trees fall on power lines and even on houses too.
Can you go back to satellite to prove this point? Because there is a lopsided nature to this. Do you see everybody the east quadrant of this storm? That's basically what Tampa Bay is bracing for, and obviously our coastal communities are worse. But let's just look more inland for a second. If you're in a spot like Brandon, Valrico, all it takes is, as Eric noted, a tree that is yes, 60, 65 mile per hour wind gusts over a sustained period of time, and that tree falls onto a power line and knocks out power for an entire community, or falls on top of your house and pokes a hole in your roof while rain is coming in. All it takes is one tree going down, one power line going down, for this storm to be impactful for you and your routine and your family. So, again, we get so caught up in the cone, and Floridians, I think we know Floridians so well, right? It's beyond just Florida man. It's like Florida families sometimes think, I've been through so much worse. If we're not in the cone, well, you know what? I'll be out on my front porch, drinking my iced tea and watching the storm blow on by. Yeah, but just because you're not in the cone does not mean that your neighborhood couldn't see significant impacts from this storm. Please be safe out there, everybody. And
look at Debbie. Debbie was only a tropical storm, and it dumped almost 2 feet of rain in Sarasota. And that wasn't even close to the coast. And it wasn't even a major hurricane. It was a tropical storm.
Great point. Debbie was, let's keep that in mind here, everybody. We also put in mandatory evacuation links. We have a website article on WFLA.com where you can see the mandatory evacuations as they are being issued. So if you want updates, it's all on WFLA.com. To Jillian, what about Hudson Beach?
My friend just closed on a house in Hudson Beach.
Congratulations to Eric's friend.
And I'm like, you know what? Don't sign until next week. No. They're looking at 6 to 10 foot of storm surge there. So depending on how close you are, if you're near 19 to the west of it, there's going to be several feet of water inundating your property, especially if you're right on Hudson Beach.
Let's see. Oh, Donna, I promise I would get to your comment because how big is this storm in terms of how it could affect the East Coast?
East Coast of Florida.
Yeah,
I'm assuming.
Is it like surfs up?
Yeah, maybe. That's about it. The immediate coast from Cape Canaveral southward, or maybe even Daytona southward. I don't even think you'll see really tropical storm force wind gusts, maybe 30 miles an hour at most. As you head Cape Canaveral up to Jacksonville, then it'll start to pick up a little bit more, but not really expecting storm surge there. The wind's going to be pushed up more into the Georgia coastline than anything else.
We have a couple of questions, comments that are coming in from beyond Florida. Let's touch on beyond Florida for a moment. You were talking about Valdosta earlier. Austin wants to know about Valdosta, Georgia. I feel like everyone's got family in Valdosta.
I know.
Is that true? Like, do you have an aunt or an uncle in Valdosta? I don't.
I don't even know any pinball friends there, believe it or not. I know one that's really close to there, but I can't say that I know one from Valdosta. I think this is still going to be
Georgia, by the way, folks, right? Georgia.
I still think, right along 75. I still think this is going to be at least a Category 1 storm with an eye as it passes through Valdosta. So again, places like that have a lot of trees and not many storms that kind of clear those dead trees out when it blows through. I think there's going to be a lot of damage, a lot of trees on roads, power lines, houses, stuff like that.
Let's go to Myrtle Beach for Quentin, asking how it's going to be there on Thursday evening.
Well, Thursday evening, you'll probably see tropical storm force gusts over 30, 40 miles an hour. There may be some storm surge there because the wind is going to be coming in from the south. So I wouldn't be surprised if you saw 2-3 foot of storm surge, at most, given the tides, maybe 4 to 5 feet with a tidal surge. But obviously, you're going to be so far away from the center, and it's going to weaken as it moves up into Georgia.
One more question for Georgia. Look, I'm a big baseball fan. I know the Mets and the Braves have a they're locked into a true battle in the NL East right now, and there's been so much made of what's going to happen to the Mets and Braves series. So Thursday night, 7:00, Atlanta is first pitch. What do you think, Eric?
Well, it's looking like a tropical storm overnight. I don't know. I don't think they should. We'll see.
I think actually, I thought a weather. I'll check on that. I think a weather advisory was issued, and they were talking about a doubleheader at some point.
Yeah. I don't see them because at the start of the game it might be fine, but at 10:00 at night, this thing's going to be pretty close to South Georgia already, right? And people have to get home. Nah, I don't think they're gonna. They don't take a chance with that.
Harley wants to know, hey JB and Eric, my job is saying business as usual tomorrow. I live in Newport Richey and work in Palm Harbor. What can I expect tomorrow?
I don't.
Well, so here's my thing. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. Okay, certain professions. Look, you might
work for a TV station.
You have to, right? Do you work for a TV station? You're working on Thursday. Do you work for a hospital? You might well be working on Thursday. There are just some industries, some professions, some career choices that. Look, you're working on Thursday because hurricane or not, got to be there, got to show up to work, right? Like life goes on. However, there are certain businesses where, like let's say construction, you don't want to be building homes or working on an interstate or building your neighborhood McDonald's when you're in the middle of a tropical storm or a hurricane. So certain businesses should really heed caution to this storm. So. Harley is asking about Newport Richey and working in Palm Harbor.
How about this? If you drive to work and you can wave to Jim Cantori, that is probably not a good idea to go to work. Or not even, probably not a good idea to even be there and say, hey, Jim, I'm going to work. Wait a minute.
Yeah, if you can see Jim Cantori from the front of your office building,
you're in trouble.
Your office window or something like that, then you probably want to talk to your boss and say, hey, I'm not feeling great, want to go home.
I mean, 6 to 8, 9 feet of surge in Port Richey. I don't know. I just don't think it's a good idea. I think anywhere along the coast there in Pasco County northward should be, there's a mandatory evacuations, right? Up that way. So, yeah.
Oh, man. Can we get we do this every so often when we're talking about storm coverage. Can we light up the comment section with some heart emojis for our the power crews, the linemen in Florida and beyond? I know that there's going to be linemen, power crews coming in from other states. Can we just give them a quick round of applause, shout out, because they are going to be working some really long days and nights to restore power. Now, man, Florida is like a well-oiled machine when it comes to getting power back up and running, getting internet back up and running. Ask people in Florida, unless your neighborhood has been decimated, if you have a pretty, standard power outage, crews in Florida are just, they're on it because we do this. It's Florida. It's what we do every year. But really, I want to give a shout out to all the crews out there that are going to be working, many of them close to around the clock in the days ahead to get power back up and running for people in Florida and Georgia, I'm sure, and beyond. Hey, JB and Eric from Kim. Tallahassee has municipal utility linemen crews from all over here ready to assist the area. Yeah, it's great to see.
I mean, I'm sure they're not in Tallahassee themselves because it's going to be pretty dangerous there, but they're ready to go into Tallahassee once the storm is over, I'm sure.
Yeah, the power crews, man, toss them a bottle of water. You got some donuts on your kitchen counter. Go out and maybe just say, hey, you guys good? Can I get you anything? Because man, they're working hard and working long hours. And yeah, I have a family member that works in power, and not in the Southeast, but I just know that's a tough day. It's a tough assignment, no doubt. Valerie wants to know about Venice, Florida, and can we bring up the storm surge map? I know that you had it in your graphics, Eric, because storm surge is going to be life-threatening for many areas along Florida's Gulf Coast, and you need to be aware.
Yeah, once you get into the Venice area, you're looking at about 3 to 5 foot of storm surge. So again, if you're along the immediate coast, you're definitely going to get inundated with water. Obviously, the further south you are, it's not going to be quite as bad. But still, this is a powerful storm. So even though this storm is going to be well offshore Venice, I would say a good 3 to 5 foot of storm surge Thursday late afternoon into the evening and overnight hours.
So let's go. We were talking a little bit earlier about different careers, right? Zach says, hey, JB and Eric, UPS has the drivers working tomorrow in Pinellas. My route is on Indian Rocks Beach. What should I expect? Shout out to all the logistics folks out there, UPS, FedEx, and beyond, Amazon drivers too, making those deliveries. So be safe if you are working, man. Really be careful out there, and also be mindful of the fact that there's going to be significant closures. I would imagine the bridges will be closed at one point or another. But Indian Rocks Beach tomorrow.
That's a terrible idea. I mean, they have to. UPS, FedEx, whatever, they have to shut down. They can't.
Yeah.
You can't drive.
At least for a portion of the day.
You're talking about. Well, even tomorrow morning, the wind gusts are going to be tropical storm force along the Pinellas County coast. Who's going to send out workers at 40, 50 mile an hour gusts throughout the day? It's going to increase the possible hurricane gusts. Come on. It's not a good idea.
I would hope that, as far as those certain portions of the day, especially the things cease, especially in a spot. Well, I was actually reading. I was talking about UPS drivers and Amazon drivers before I actually saw that it was Indian Rocks Beach. I'm like, okay, wait, maybe talk to your boss.
There's going to be surge there too. I mean, you're not even going to be able to drive on those roads.
Yep. Brian says, should Sarasota County expect similar conditions to Debbie? Debbie is still fresh in the minds of many down in Sarasota, Eric.
Yeah, that's why I say no. Thankfully, big reason is this is going to be moving quickly. It's going to move over 20 miles an hour once it starts getting going. So Sarasota, yeah, of course, you're going to get rain. You could get a few inches of rain, but you're not going to get 16 or 10. You're not going to get anything like you got before. So thankfully, even though this is umpteenth time stronger than Debbie, it doesn't matter, right? The strength, it matters the position, how fast it's moving. So in Sarasota County, it's not going to be all that bad, although you still have the possibility of 4 to 7 feet of storm surge along the immediate coast. But that flooding was a little bit further inland. I don't see that happening this time.
Okay, let's go to Sandra, YouTube Live. So we talked about Florida State's home, which is Tallahassee, Florida. Gainesville, look, whether you're a Seminole or a Gator, you're going to experience an impact from the storm. The Seminoles are getting it worse, but the Gators are going to get impacts too.
Yeah, I don't see hurricane force wind gusts. Gainesville is further inland on 75 for people that don't know. And so, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw 60 mile an hour gusts and, a few inches of rain. But again, this is going to move quickly. I can imagine that, they'll shut down classes on Thursday and maybe reopen them on Friday since things are going to really improve.
Next NHC update. So intermediary updates at 2 o'clock and 8 o'clock.
Correct.
Both AM and PM Eastern time. Those are mostly positional updates?
No, it's all text. It's did the storm strengthen? Is it moving quicker? Did the pressure lower? And where it's at? So there's no cone updates, but I think it's going to be important to see the 2 o'clock update because remember we did this last year. We looked at the pressure. We looked at the wind, the pressure, and the movement in this graphic. And we said, okay, JB, it's 80 and 979. Let's see if the pressure drops, and let's see if the winds go up. I think we're going to see a spectacular increase in wind and drop in pressure over the next several updates, including the 2 and the 8. So I think between now and 8 o'clock this evening, we could be talking at least a 2, maybe even up close to a Category 3 by the 8 o'clock update tonight. But I would say a high-end 2.
That's a bit of a hot take right there. Yeah. No, that's okay. Let me, and we'll kind of pair that with another observation. Remember, I was talking about how I felt like the track nudged to the west in the most recent updates. Another observation, it sped up, didn't it? We were initially talking about a landfall maybe in the 10, 11 o'clock range Thursday night, but there was a slight speed increase here because the 3, I mean, we now have a Thursday 8 o'clock interval for landfall, and that's so, I mean, again, speed is really on our side here. This is going to be fast moving, and it's not going to, there's no anticipation of this stalling anywhere in the Gulf, right?
It's on our side, JB, but what it does is once it moves inland, places that never see hurricane force wind, like southern Georgia, western Georgia, they're going to see hurricane force wind. And the eye still intact well into southern Georgia. So places that don't normally see it are going to have, 70, 80, 90 mile an hour wind, even up to 100 wind gusts. So that's the bad part of the speed. The good part is that we're not going to see much rain. But the wind gusts in a fast-moving storm are typically higher because you're adding the forward speed, right, to the actual wind speed of the storm. So those are the down players with that. But, it'll be out of here quick. By Friday morning, if people ask, oh, can I go to work Friday, I would definitely say yeah. Now, unless, you're living along the coast and you're inundated with storm surge water, then I'd say no.
I was an observer on a Hurricane Hunter flight several years back. I was in Irma. With the Hurricane Hunters on a flight that went into Irma as it made the turn north. And again, Irma, Category 5, just beast, right? You fly into it, and it's a really bumpy ride. Okay, flying in a hurricane is as you would expect. It's not, first class on Delta. It's in fact, you don't really have much of a seat. You have a bench when you're with the Hurricane Hunters. You're just holding on. It's bumpy, and but your adrenaline's going, right? Until you hit the eye wall. You emerge into the eye wall, and all of a sudden things get relatively calm, and you look around, and you're in what's called the Coliseum effect. And you're looking around, and you realize that, my goodness, it's so still and calm in here. You are quite literally in the eye of a hurricane. I'll remember this probably until the day I die. It's just one of those experiences that you're tens of thousands of feet up into the air in the eye of a hurricane. It's pretty wild. So what you're saying is, I bring this up because with the speed of this storm, that eye wall is going to stay somewhat intact as it moves over land and even into Georgia. So you don't want to be, in southwest Georgia when the eye wall is passing over you. But if you were, and you were looking up when you are in the eye, are you going to be able to? What are you going to see when you're actually?
I do have a cool graphic.
Yeah.
First of all, a friend of mine, Paul, that I went to college with, he actually flies those Hurricane Hunters. I don't know if you were with him at the time, but he offered years ago, and I kind of wimped out, even though I really want to do it.
I almost wimped out.
I really want to do it, but I don't want to get sick, and I have that fear with the flying and all. But yeah, he says it's the coolest thing. Okay, so check this out. So this is our in-house model, and I want you to focus on the eye. Okay. So again, you can see the wind gust, and look at the blue. That's 125 mile per hour plus, up to 140 wind gust, all right? Now you can see the eye. It's still well intact. Now the eye is over, and again, our in-house model takes this a little bit to the east of Tallahassee. And then once it gets to, I don't have it all the way to Valdosta, but as I, progress this all the way, and you can see the eye stays intact all the way through the Panhandle, and you even see the 125 mile per hour wind gusts in Lake City, and progressing even forward, you'd even be able to see slight clearing in an eye in Valdosta if this does take this path. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And that's so many miles away from the coast.
Yeah, and it just speaks to, again, the speed. It's almost like a speeding car running into a storefront.
Right.
If you're going 30 miles per hour and you drive into your local Arby's, all right, you might make it, a few feet in the front door. But if you're going 80, 90, 100 miles an hour into your local Arby's, you're going to end up in the kitchen.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how great of a metaphor that is. I don't know how,
Yeah.
how well I nailed that one. But there is a comp there with the fact that the speed of this system, I mean, it's going to be ramming into Florida, and then these hurricane force winds are going to be, felt even as far north as southern Georgia. How about Panama City? Let's go to Sync Sketch here. Panama City, things are, I don't want to say do we say improving?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you take a look at this model, I mean, once you get toward Apalachicola, things really, really improve drastically. You're not really going to have, maybe tropical storm force wind gust in Panama City, but you're not going to have a prolonged period of time of sustained tropical storm force wind. So once you get west of Apalachicola, it really begins to improve. And you can see mainly in Panama City, the winds that are strong are offshore. And the wind's going to be blowing offshore, definitely, because you'll be on the west side of the storm. So I think Panama City will be spared in this case here.
Really quick, let's just, while we're up in that region, Eric, let's touch on Destin for Daisy. I love Destin.
Now, is Destin, is that west? That's west of Panama City, isn't it?
It is. No, I think it's.
Or is it in between Apalachicola and?
Well, now you got me second guessing myself. Destin, I believe, is east of Panama City. No?
But not by much.
Well, yeah. See, every time I go to Destin, I'm having such a great time, I forget where I am. No, Destin is west of Panama City.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay,
yep.
So again, anything west of Panama City, I wouldn't be too concerned with this.
Okay, let's go to Semper. How similar does this look to Michael? That went from Cat 2 to Cat 5 fairly quickly. That's rapid intensification, but I mean, is there a rapid intensification pattern that we're seeing so far with these models that show any potential similarity between Michael and Helene?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, with Michael, the water temperatures were very, very hot. There was a lot of energy to work with. But Michael didn't have any wind shear whatsoever as it made landfall. This is going to have a little bit of wind shear once it gets closer to the coast. So I think it's going to rapidly intensify, and then it doesn't have that ocean heat content either once it gets north of Tampa. So I think it's going to level out a bit. And in fact, it may even decrease 5 miles per hour or so, where Michael just kept going. I mean, it was, the water temperatures were hot. The wind shear was low all the way up to the coast. And so that allowed it to just strengthen. Like Ian was the same thing, right? Ian strengthened all the way up to the coast before it made landfall. This one, I think, is going to top out somewhere west of Tampa, and then either level out or maybe even decrease.
Tons of questions about Spring Hill all of a sudden. The mob in Spring Hill is coming for us because we haven't talked about you guys yet. We're here to do so. Kim wants to know, hey, Eric, any update for Spring Hill? Lorraine, also, how's inland Spring Hill looking? Let's touch on those.
Yeah,
roads.
I mean, Spring Hill is inland as it is, so you're not going to have to worry about storm surge, but it's far enough to the north that you probably will experience hurricane force wind gusts, right? Over 75 miles an hour, maybe even 80 miles an hour as we head toward Thursday evening. As far as rain goes, like, that's not going to be the issue. It's going to be the wind. And again, there's a lot of mobile home parks and modular homes and stuff like that in Spring Hill, and I'm telling you, those roofs can be blown off in 50 to 60 mile per hour gusts, and we're looking at 70 to 80 mile per hour gusts. So it's not. It may not be pretty up there.
Let's go to Highlands County for Chelsea. What are the projected rainfall totals in Highlands? Is that on your map? I know you had a map earlier.
Yeah. It's all the way at the end. Let me scroll.
Hold on, folks.
Yep.
Count to 5.
I only counted 2. Okay. Come on, computer, you can do it. It's not a Monday anymore. So, it went back to my original.
Wait, so when you go back to the beginning of the graphics, do you have to scroll all the way through again?
Yeah. You can't back up, because if you back up, then it's over.
Okay, so we're hitting the, like on your smart TV remote at home,
Okay.
folks. You're like hitting the next button.
Right,
That's
right.
Literally what Eric's doing.
So as far as the GFS model, you look at Highlands County, 1 to 3 inches at most. European model, not much different. Notice the difference from the immediate coast, JB, and then like along I-75 almost, right?
Wild.
And then once you get east of 75, you're like, wow. Even in the Orlando area, see that little green speck? That's not even an inch of rain, okay? And that does include the Space Coast all the way up to Jacksonville. I mean, there's really not much rain expected. This is our in-house model, which will be a little bit more. It's higher resolution, maybe 1 to 3 inches of rain. Lake Placid, Sebring, Avon Park, those are the bigger cities in Highlands County. And you're just not really seeing all that much in the way of rain.
Let's go to on this graph. Let's stay on that particular graphic. Heather wants to know about Newport Richey. Yeah, look, Newport Richey's in a relatively vulnerable spot, and while we're just spotlighting, some commenters here as well, Jonathan as well. We'll actually update this graphic live. You're able to see Jonathan Sims, hashtag Hey Eric, how about Newport Richey?
Yeah, obviously, if Jim Cantori's there, it may not look, and I'll say that, but
darn it, Jim.
It may not look pretty. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw 4 to 6 inches of rain along the immediate coast, but again, the rain isn't going to be the biggest issue with this. It's going to be storm surge, and you're looking at 6, 8, 9 feet of storm surge in that area, all depending on how close to the coast you live. If you live within a mile or so away from the coast, it may not be pretty at all. But you're going to see wind gusts possible 75, 80 miles an hour, hurricane force wind gusts. So again, it could be pretty devastating in that area.